been watching mainstream media, for example, CNN, Fox News, NPR, or you've read the New York Times, the Washington Post, you might be worried about crime. Oh, there's crime everywhere. Yeah, everybody's criming. Now, that said, national statistics do show a spike in violent crime, and it is concerning. But if you've watched or read any of these media outlets, where do they say the fault lies? Democrats, progressives. I can't believe they would defund the police. Oh, the entire city's burning down. Really? Really? Well, for one, nobody defunded the police. And secondly, the Democrats actually funded police more. But see, understand that these outlets are playing into election narratives specifically from the right wing, Republicans, that blame both individual incidents and broad nationwide trends on the left. According to a Media Matters analysis, the coverage often fails to debunk these GOP narratives or note that any violent crime or that the level of violent crime has also risen in Republican-run areas. So you never hear about that. All you hear about is Democrat cities, it's full of crime, Los Angeles, New York, the increase in the crime rate. But it turns out that no, according to statistics, you also have increasing crime all over the country, not just in Democrat areas. All right. So let me give you an example here of some of this reporting. Again, according to this Media Matters analysis, Republicans have hyped the specter of crime to an absurd degree. Numerous stories have taken the bait, featuring snippets of GOP ads, quotes, and Republicans emphasizing narratives, blaming Democratic policies, or focusing on crime in Democratic-run areas, and or focusing on polling, showing that voters prefer Republicans to Democrats on crime. All of this, of course, is related. So these examples, a September 26 New York Times article headline, GOP redoubles efforts to tie Democrats to high crime areas, included all of these talking points, all of these narratives. An October 5th Politico article headlined, midterm voters key in on crime, noted that Republicans relentlessly tied Democrats to a pandemic-era rise in crime on the campaign trail and TV ads. An October 15th article from The Hill headlined, Republicans ride crime wave, worries in midterms home stretch, reported that Republicans up and down the ballot are working to make worries about a crime wave translate to a red wave, citing one political ad in Illinois, quoting one Republican gubernatorial candidate, and citing multiple polls on the issue, including ones saying voters think Republicans are better suited to deal with crime than Democrats. And on October 20th, NPR's All Things Considered aired a segment which bore the online headline, Democrats are embracing police, but can that distract from crime in their cities? An October 25th Associated Press story in New York gubernatorial race also explained that Republicans around the country are closing with a message that follows closely to what Lee Zeldin has argued much of the year. In recent debates from Georgia to Michigan and Wisconsin, GOP contenders have blasted Democrats as inattentive to crime. And on October 21st, NBC News correspondent Daisha Burns aired a segment on MSNBC's Morning Joe pushing GOP narratives on crime in Pennsylvania. In none of these examples, point out that while Republicans are blaming Democrats for violent crime is nearly as high or worse in Republican-run parts of the country. All of that critical context is missing, gone, left out. Maybe on purpose. Now, in June, the Wall Street Journal reported that violent crime isn't just rising in the nation's cities. Murder rates across the rural U.S. have soared during the pandemic. From the article, homicide rates in rural America rose 25% in 2020, according to the CDC. It was the largest rural increase since the agency began tracking such data in 1999. The rise came close to the 30% spike in homicide rates in metropolitan areas in 2020. So 25 and 30% respectively. Not a huge difference there, is it? Now, the CDC has not been able to analyze 2021 homicide data yet, but in some rural counties, murder rates remained high last year, while on others, they have begun to recede along with COVID, according to data from local law enforcement. So now there's more data. And by the way, this comes from a group that I never thought I would quote positively, But in this case, this analysis is correct. Third Way. I know. I have my issues with Third Way, but wait. They had a report on March 15th titled this: The Red State Murder Problem. In it, they found that despite a media narrative to the contrary, this is a problem that afflicts Republican-run cities and states as much or more than the Democratic bastions. Strange bedfellows indeed. True. They also found that in 2020, per capita murder rates were 40% higher in states won by Donald Trump than those won by Joe Biden, and 8 out of the 10 states with the highest murder rates in 2020 voted for for the Republican presidential nominee in every election in this century. So, when you look at crime, can you say it went up? Yes, of course, that's a fact. It's objectively true. Crime went up all across the country, again, mostly during the pandemic. But you can't say it's because of Democrats. You can't say it's because of progressives. You can't blame defund the police, because nobody defunded the police. Joe Biden gave more money to the police. Lots more money. Democrats voted for more police. And I'm somebody who does want to defund the police. This is ridiculous. And yet, again, every news outlet from Fox to CNN to the New York Times, local newspapers, they run ridiculous headlines. U.S. cities hit all-time murder records. Even though it was actually higher back in the 80s. But as a result, Republicans, Fox News, they have taken this narrative and they have ran it as a Democrat problem. Democrats, soft on crime. In fact, they blame it on Democrats being soft on crime, and have even referred to the New York District Attorney's approach as hug-a-thug. Not kidding. Many other news stories outside of Fox have also purported that police reform is responsible for this rise in murder and have pointed to cities like New York and LA. Again, not true. Murder rates are far higher in Trump voting red states than Biden voting blue states, and sometimes murder rates are highest in cities with Republican mayors. As of 2020, 11 out of the 50 largest cities in the U.S. were run by right-wingers, Republicans, and 10 saw a spike in murder since the pandemic began. For example, Jacksonville, a city with a Republican mayor, had 128 more murders in 2020 than San Francisco. City with a Democrat mayor, despite their comparable populations. The homicide rate in Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco was half that of House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy's Bakersfield. City with a Republican mayor that overwhelmingly voted for Trump. In an October 20th article published in The Atlantic also reported on an exhaustive new study from the Center for American Progress that compares cities that have elected so-called progressive prosecutors, places with whose district attorneys continue to pursue more traditional approaches. So now one of them, of course, is Larry Krasner, right? So I think he's done a great job. Now, senior editor Ronald Brownstein explained that in the study, they found that murder rates increased in a smaller share of cities with progressive prosecutors, 56%, than in those with traditional prosecutors, 68%, or prosecutors who fell in the middle, 62%. So, from the article, Counter-Conventional Wisdom, the study found that homicides over recent years increased less rapidly in cities with progressive prosecutors than in those with more traditional DAs. So it's not the prosecutors that are so-called, soft on crime. No, you actually have better outcomes when you have progressives. It also found no meaningful differences between cities with progressive or traditional DAs in trends for larceny and robbery. Zachary Pleat of Media Matters, who wrote this article, asked Todd Fogelsong, a fellow in residence at the University of Toronto, and one of the co-authors of the study. And here's what Todd told him. I think it's really important to emphasize the extent to which we looked for a relationship and found none between a prosecutor's commitment to reform and crime rates. So reforming police, reforming our criminal justice system does not increase crime. It actually makes outcomes better. So that said, let's finally address the last thing, and that is public opinion. Remember, there's so many polls out there where, and this is maddening because I see it everywhere, from the economy to crime, right? Where the public trusts Republicans in these issues more than the left, more than Democrats or progressives. They have an issue. Some examples. Polling shows, this is according to the New York Times, that voters tend to see Republicans as stronger on public safety by a margin of 10 percentage points. Voters nationwide also said they agreed more with Republicans on crime and policing, according to a New York Times Siena College poll from September. Politico also reported that Republicans are leaning into fears that are evident in polling. About 3/4 of respondents say violent crime is increasing nationally. The Hill cited 3 polls on the importance of crime to voters for the upcoming elections, then added another September 23 to October 3rd Reuters poll, found that more voters think that Republicans are better suited to deal with crime than Democrats, 39 to 30%. So the reason that I cite that is because there is a direct relationship to the media narrative on crime that I just illustrated and the polling on the issue. If you were informed by media about this, and again, you are listening to mainstream outlets, then you're going to come away with the impression that Democrats are soft on crime. Again, not true. Joe Biden, and I criticized him for this, authored the crime bill, a racist piece of legislation that has negatively impacted minorities across the country. Democrats soft on crime? No. Disastrous. Disastrous. Not true at all. Not true. So, but you see this, right? They'll see all the headlines and they'll see these same outlets that are supposedly liberal media blaming the Democrats. And they'll think, well, obviously Democrats are soft on crime. They're terrible on crime. I guess I'll vote for Republicans if I want to feel safe. Look, that's how the media has an effect. Now, if media were honest, then they would tell people what the reality of what's going on. There's almost no difference. But instead, they're doing dishonest narratives. And if they didn't do these dishonest narratives, well, then the polls wouldn't be so favorable to Republicans. Because as we see from the data, Republicans are no better in stopping crime. In reality, the difference between Republicans and Democrats on crime is that the right wing, Republicans, are just far more punitive in their response to crime. Far, far more punitive.